Hello, I'm Isabella Milan, author of the book Praying for a Miracle When It's Hopeless. Here, I will be sharing the chapter of my book I call Acceptance. I wouldn't be writing this chapter if it was not necessary for your survival. No one will ever accept the fact that something terrible has happened to them. Imagine telling a woman who lost her 4 children to accept it and move on. She will look at you like the most inhuman being that ever existed on the earth. Unfortunately, before you heal or overcome a terrible situation such as grief or loss, you must accept it first. The main aim of sharing my story is to encourage people battling with metastasis to believe in hope. I have tried to elucidate the hopelessness of stage 4 breast cancer. The diagnosis is not easily acceptable, but before you start looking for a solution or cure, you must acknowledge it. Therefore, the first step you must take in this journey is acceptance. Yes, I have said you must accept the situation to move on, but it is not always easy. The first time you hear that you have stage 4 breast cancer, it will always seem like a dream. Afterward, you will pass through many emotional stages of grief. Yes, such a diagnosis will force you to grieve as though someone has died. You will feel as if you just received your death sentence. Well, metastasis is like that unless you accept it and get to work and look for a solution. If you hear such an announcement and start grieving without hope, you will die before your time. To help you understand the emotions running through you right now, let's consider the 5 stages of grief by Kubler-Ross. Although the author was referring to the stages we pass through when we lose someone, we can relate it to this situation. According to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, grief comes in 5 stages. Some people refer to these stages as DABDA: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Number 1, denial. This is the first stage you will pass through after a metastasis diagnosis. It helps you to forget what the doctor told you briefly. Note that I use the word briefly to show you that relief doesn't last. Once you hear that cancer has progressed to stage 4, everything will stand still. Shock and denial will set in and mobilize you into immobility. Why did I say immobility? When you are in denial, people will see you doing everything you need to do, but your mind wouldn't be there. Have you ever seen someone standing beside the sink cleaning one plate for 1 hour? The hands are working, but the mind is absent. To me, that person is immobile. Therefore, if you have just heard about it or your loved one has received the M word, expect the denial stage first. You need it briefly to cope with this sudden life-changing news, but dwelling in it longer is not helpful. Number 2, anger. You must be angry with such news to free your heart from exploding. Don't worry that you are angry, but be thankful for it. You may see yourself hating everyone, starting from even the doctor that said it to your family that is healthy. The height of it all is when you see yourself calling God partial or wicked. It takes grace to restrain yourself from asking if God exists. If someone tells you to trust God at that time, you may slap them. You will be questioning God on why you should be the one to suffer from stage 4 breast cancer. Once you have crossed the denial stage, the anger that will seem to consume you will take over. But be happy, because it will also give you the strength to approach the acceptance stage. Also, anger helps you to feel freer from the pains of such news. It happened to me, so I know how it feels. Number 3, bargaining. This is the stage when you make deals with God, the universe, or the heavens, depending on what you believe. We Christians will always promise God everything if He could only spare us. You will ask for second chances to do things better. Well, everything that happens at this stage is false hope. You are clutching on straws. It has happened, yes? So what next? Fight. Anyway, the bargaining stage helps you too. You will pass through the journey of what ifs, and after exhausting the what ifs, you will approach the reality more. In cases of stage 4 breast cancer, people always think that there is something they should have done to prevent it. Some people will say, what if I had gone to the hospital sooner? It wouldn't have progressed to metastasis. What if I had taken all the therapies? Maybe cancer wouldn't have spread to this extent. So many more available to think, but hey, this is cancer we're talking about here. It spread, yes. You didn't cause it. It wasn't your fault. And bargaining for healing is trying to hold on to false hope. So what will you do? Move on and grab the real hope and accept it. I was one of the women of the stage 4 breast cancer group. I did not think I'd make it to survivor status or see my son graduate from high school, but I accepted the fact and believed I had a slim chance. Hope is powerful. Number 4, depression. You can't help it, but after bargaining and realizing that you failed the negotiation, depression sets in. When you remember that the stage of the cancer is hopeless and incurable, you want to resign to your fate. At the bargaining stage, you were holding on to false hopes. You believe that there must be a way to wiggle out of metastasis. Once you realize there is nothing to be done, you withdraw into yourself. Some of the characteristics of a depressed person are numbness, lack of zeal, enthusiasm, pessimism, and complete withdrawal from people. When you are at this stage, the world would seem blank, lifeless, worthless, and hopeless. You would rather lie on your bed all day long than seeing people. The worst part is that you may consider suicide at one point. No matter what happens or what you feel, the next stage makes everything easier. Number 5, acceptance. This is the stage when you finally realize that you have metastasis and can be okay if you hope. You can tell yourself that it is okay. I am going to be fine. It is not the end of my life. This is the stage when the healing process takes another turn to the best. Your emotions may stabilize and you start accepting the reality of the situation. When you accept the deadliness of stage 4 breast cancer, concentrating on recovery will start. If you have not gotten to this stage, even the doctors will not upset you. It will be difficult to convince you of anything unless you have come back to reality. This is why you must first accept that you have metastasis. Afterward, you can start applying the survival tips for a better future. For instance, at the beginning of my journey, I did not want any part of being one of the victims of the breast cancer group denial and anger stages. Since my first episode in 2004 was pre-breast cancer, I refused chemotherapy. I didn't want to go to support groups, and I did not want any part of sympathizing or identifying with breast cancer sufferers. It took 3 times of breast cancer recurrence and 3 years before I could move through the stages, ending with the acceptance stage. Finally, I realized and accepted I was one of the women of the stage 4 breast cancer group. I did not think I'd make it to survivor status or see my son graduate from high school, but I accepted the fact and believed I had a slim chance. Hope is powerful. Before I close this chapter, I want to drop some tips that will help you after accepting the reality. Number 1, change your perspective about metastasis. We already know that this stage of cancer is deadly. The mortality rate is high, and there is no shortcut cure. This is what everybody believes, and even the doctors say so. However, the most important thing is, how do you see it? Will you take it as your death sentence, or will you see it through a hopeful eye? When you decide to change the way you look at it, your healing process has begun. Believe me when I tell you this, the way you view stage 4 breast cancer will determine the way you experience it. Number 2, treat yourself better. Sometimes patients kill themselves before the sickness does. Imagine neglecting yourself because they told you that metastasis has no cure. So if God decides to add 20 years for you after the diagnosis, will you tell him no through your actions? I didn't think so. Therefore, instead of neglecting your needs and focusing on dying, try harder to be kind to you. No one will do it for you if you don't. Eat healthy foods when you can and avoid the ones that can harm you. Other things you can do are mindful meditation, exercise, and positivity. Not to worry, I will visit each one in subsequent chapters. Number 3, start planning on your way forward. It has come, yes? Now what? If you want to cope more with the disease, start planning on how to do it. The more you plan for your moves towards a solution, the better you will feel. Don't wait for others to take the decisions from you. Take the lead and let your helpers follow suit. If you are reluctant and ready to die, no one will try. When you are in the planning mood, hope will grow and your emotions will be the calm. Number 4, join a support group. I resisted joining a support group initially, but I later realized that it was necessary. These are people who understand what you are going through. You can even relate to them more than your family members. Instead of carrying everything in your mind, lean on them and ease the burden. You may be surprised by how helpful they'll be in your fight.